So the primary theme of this first part of Hebrews is that Jesus is superior. Superior to angels is where the Hebrew writer focuses in. And in chapter 2, verse 5, he goes on. It is not to angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking. Now, for me, this is new, right? So you're speaking about a world to come. I'm going to run back here and see if I can figure this out. Not really. But what we can know is that angels, it was not to angels that the world to come was subjected. In verse 6, he goes on, but there's a place where someone has testified. This is a technique that you're going to see several times in the book of Hebrews, where the writer says, okay, this is in the Bible, someone has written, someone has said, someone has testified, but what is mankind that you are mindful of them, and the Son of Man that you care for them, for him? You made them a little lower than the angels. You crowned them with glory and honor and put everything under their feet, which this is quite interesting. And it's a quote from Psalm chapter 8. Actually, there are no chapters in the book of Psalms. There are just Psalms. So it's the 8th Psalm. And there's an interesting piece I want to focus on in a little bit here on verse 7. You made them. Who would that be? Mankind. You have to just go back to verse 6. What is mankind? You made them a little lower than the angels. If there's a hierarchy of, I'm not so sure it's the value as, well, maybe it is a value, but it's not. I would think of it as value, but God doesn't. He just thinks of it as a different role, a little lower than the angels, which when I think about the power of the angels and the function and role of the angels, that's high stuff. I mean, that's big stuff. We're made just a little lower than the angels, and you crown them with glory and honor. I don't always feel I am crowned with glory and honor. There are a lot of times, especially at my age, I'm going, this is not fun. My mother-in-law, I had a great mother-in-law, but she, in her last years, she just had a little bit of dementia going, where her recent recall was not very good, but she would often say, this getting old thing's not for sissies. And then she'd say, the old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be. Well, God crowned humanity with glory and honor. That's okay. You can't always believe that the world is as the way you see it. And there are times you can't even believe the mirror. I know I'm talking physical mirror, literal mirror. That, yeah, I'm old. And yet, my bones creak, my back aches, my knees are not as good as they used to be. I'm not as strong as I used to be. But I am crowned with glory and honor. Okay, now there's this other way to look at that. What about Adam and Eve? Boy, if anybody human was crowned with glory and honor, it was Adam and Eve. neither one of them had belly buttons because they weren't birthed, they were created. And there were no flaws. I mean, the most beautiful woman that has ever existed and the most handsome and perfect man connected to this perfect and beautiful woman, there's never been anybody as handsome, beautiful, perfect as Adam and Eve. They were crowned with glory. And he put everything under their feet, which, if you go back to the book of Genesis, God said to them that they were to have domain over all the created order. Well, that's kind of putting everything under their feet. In putting everything under them, the writer goes on, this is verse 8, in putting everything under them, God left nothing that is not subject to them. This is a huge thing. Now, I want to steward the earth, but I'm not an environmental alarmist. I do think that when God subjected everything to mankind, the execution of that, the stewardship of that, was quite different than this use and then throw away mentality that is pretty much universal. God left nothing that is not subject to them. Okay. The earth, believe it or not, the earth is subject to you and me. Not just this nameless, faceless humanity. It's ours to steward. You can feel however you want to feel about recycling and the shrinking rainforests and climate change and whatever. There are things that I can make a difference with. I can steward, and other things that they're out of my control. So what is within my control is what I do about what God has put in my stewardship. I think we need to be more thoughtful, generally, about how we steward and utilize everything without becoming earth worshipers. That's the earth is subject to us. We're not subject to it. Okay. I'm just that far away from going on and on and on. But and then the writer says what I'm thinking, and yet at present we do not see everything subject to them, but we do see Jesus, who is made lower than the angels for a little while, meaning he became a man for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. And so it cycles back around to Jesus. Jesus is supreme. He's greater than in every way. And as if it needs to be restated, which it does over and over again, that his purpose was to die, to suffer death, so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. We're all, I was going to say we're all going to die. I'm not so sure. I don't think that's true. Whoever is still living when Jesus returns is not going to die. Any of those left behind, which may or may not be us, that's the way the system is. We're going to die. Jesus did, so that by that he might taste death for everyone, which that's interesting. I mean, if you got background in the church, that probably initially means to us, I'm in that group, he died to save us. Well, so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone in our place. Okay. Then verse 10, in bringing many sons and daughters to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through what he suffered. What? Wow. Okay, there's a ton here, so we're going to go a little bit at a time. In bringing many sons and daughters to glory, okay, that's saving people like you and me. It was fitting that God, and it's like, just a reminder here, for whom and through whom everything exists, okay, that's the God we're talking about here, should make the pioneer of our salvation the first. He stepped out. He was the pioneer, of their salvation, perfect through what he suffered. All right, now, it's my thought that Jesus was perfect. He never sinned. So, the pioneer of their salvation was made perfect through what he suffered. I think there's probably more to it, but I think this is there. When Jesus suffered, he suffered for us, and it gave us a more complete view of who he was and a more perfect way to connect to him. We suffer. He suffered too. But still, there's this idea that God was in the process somehow of making Jesus perfect and using suffering to do that. And here's a kind of scary thought for me. He's the pioneer. What happens after the pioneer? Then lots of others come, right? Well, I wonder, is it possible that God is making us perfect through suffering? That part of the role of suffering is to help us become more complete. Because this word perfect actually does mean complete. No gaps, no lack. In my life, when it happens, a lot of times the suffering just seems random and undeserved, and sometimes it's not the result of what I've chosen, but what others have chosen. Oh, and it happens, okay? But here's the thing. God wants to use our suffering to complete us. So if you're going through suffering right now, this will not make it less sucky. Suffering just sucks. It stinks. It hurts. But if I permit him to shape my thinking, my perceptions, even my emotions through suffering, they ultimately have a positive function, which does not make it easier. Well, I pretty well boogered this one. Next time I'll try to do better on Soul Care with Stevie.